all of a sudden you're thrust into something that you wouldn't have volunteered for.
Inside Ferguson.
Two people on separate sides of the street.
With a Pro Football Hall of Famer.
Bring about good in the midst of something bad.
How Aeneas Williams is bringing his city together on today's 700 Club.
Let's do what we need to do so we can find a resolve, a reconciliation.
Well, welcome to the 700 Club. President Obama is back from vacation to a world that's blowing up around him. Terrorists have their sights set on Iraq and Syria. Vladimir Putin has his sights set on Ukraine. And Obama faces a big question. Did his own failures cause these problems in the first place?
Critics say the White House is simply lurching from one emergency to the next with no plan of action and no strategy for the future. Dale Hurd has that story.
Officials say the U.S. has begun surveillance flights over Syria in a move that could pave the way for airstrikes against Islamic State militants. After 3 years of war in Syria and months of ISIS rampaging through Iraq, White House officials are still trying to get on the same page. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel called ISIS an imminent threat to the United States. Then other White House officials backed away from that. One potential target for the U.S. military, the northern Syrian city of Raqqa, an ISIS stronghold.
Raqqa is about the safest territory for the Islamic State that currently exists.
The London Mirror reports British and U.S. special forces are forming a hunter-killer unit to smash the Islamic State by hitting its command structure. And things just got more dangerous in Ukraine, with the announcement that Ukraine has captured 10 Russian soldiers on its soil. The two nations are meeting for talks that are expected to go nowhere. President Obama has to decide if the U.S. will help Ukraine in a support role, and both choices are bad. If the U.S. doesn't help, eastern Ukraine could be overrun by a Russian invasion. But increasing military aid to Ukraine risks a U.S.-Russian showdown in a part of the world where Russia is militarily stronger than the United States. But some members of Congress say it's time for America to stop acting weak.
This is an administration, which the kindest word I can use is feckless, where they have not outlined a role that the United States of America has to play, and that's a leadership role. The president has to understand that America must lead, and when America hasn't, a lot of bad things happen.
Dale Hurd, CBN News.
You know, that statement, nature abhors a vacuum, and we've left a vacuum of leadership. There's no question about it, and the bad guys come rushing into that vacuum. Well, President Obama called the Islamic terrorists in Iraq, quote, the JV squad. But now they're brutally attacking innocent Christians and Yazidis, and we're going to show you just how horrible those assaults have been by that so-called JV squad. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News in Washington.
Pat, U.S. officials call ISIS terrorists an incredible fighting force, and their relentless advance has created a refugee crisis that's unimaginable. Chris Mitchell files this latest report from northern Iraq.
It looks like a scene out of the Bible, a modern-day exodus. Tens of thousands made the trek from Mount Sinjar all the way here to the United Nations refugee camp. For some, a 2, 3, even 4-day journey. Most of them came with just the clothes on their back. And out of the multitude, each one has a story. When ISIS attacked Sinjar, home to most of these Yazidis, Guli Udaida, a name which means God giveth, said it felt like the end of the world.
When they came, they caught some people and kidnapped beautiful girls and took them away. We escaped. The ones that stayed, ISIS killed.
When they got to Mount Sinjar, her son went back for food. ISIS captured him, shot him, took out his eyes and cut off his head. His friend buried him. The mountain had its own horrors. Flus Kadar used this cap from a medicine bottle to keep her children alive.
I gave my children a drop of water every hour. The water was very far away.
When the Yazidis made their escape from Mount Sinjar, this is the route that they took. Mount Sinjar is about 100 miles away, and most of that is simply desert. They finally came to this desert road behind me, crossed the Tigris River, and made their way up the road to the United Nations camp. It took Kadar 4 days to make the walk. He had arrived just 1 hour before we talked to him.
We are in a desperate situation. We don't have any hope. We don't have any salvation. I am tired and I just want to get some sleep.
These 12-year-old boys, like Tassim, saw things likely to haunt them the rest of their lives. Razine remembers the mountain.
Many kids died on the mountain because there was no water. We escaped from ISIS because they wanted us to convert to Islam or be killed. I was there when ISIS came and shot one girl with a bullet in the head because they told her to convert. She refused, and they killed her.
When you go from a home to a tent within days, how do you deal with the 120-degree heat, knowing that winter is on its way?
We are sleeping on the ground. The rain is coming and we don't know what we're going to do. We have no future.
Here in the Middle East, the Christians and the Yazidis, they cut us like sheep. There is no mercy for us.
The plight of the Yazidis reminded our translator when he was a refugee from Saddam Hussein in 1991.
It's not easy to explain. You can see, as you see, it's horrible, man.
In this tent city, life goes on. An elderly woman makes tea for her family. Young children play a game out of bottle caps. The UN supplies water. It's a refuge, but not a home. The war-weary faces of these Yazidis bear a horrific past, a precarious present, and an unknown future. Sometimes the ordeal spills over in tears. Many don't want to see Iraq anymore.
We wait for the mercy of God and people like you to be protected from the evil men.
They're also asking the U.S. and the West for help.
My request for all the believers in America and all over the world, and all the church and around the world to pray for these people.
Chris Mitchell, Bajid Kandala Refugee Camp, northern Iraq.
Pat, some of those scenes and certainly their stories are simply heartbreaking.
Well, it's hideous what these monsters are doing. This ISIS is monsters. They are absolute animals. They are fanatic monsters. They have no heart, no feeling, no compassion. They're just butchers. And they have grown on the scene. I hate to say it because the United States has failed in its job as the most powerful nation on earth. In the last couple of years, we have let them grow. We didn't have to, but they grew in Syria. Because we did nothing, and we then did not have a status of forces agreement in Iraq, and we pulled out precipitately, and they were able to take great swaths of territory. Now they have a great deal of money, they have sophistication, we understand they have shoulder-fired missiles, Stinger missiles, that kind of thing. They have tanks, they have all kinds of sophisticated equipment, and we just walked away. Now we're getting back in, but it's kind of like we're dipping a toe in the water instead of coming in to help these people. So they need our prayers. But look, CBN is not going to wait for the Obama administration to act. We're acting. And CBN International is up there helping those Christians, helping the Yazidis, helping those who are suffering. And they need food, they need clothing, they need water, they need blankets, they need all this. Now, it's CBN International Disaster Relief Fund, CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. So this is the time to do something generous, to help those who are suffering. But it breaks your heart to see what's done, the inhumanity of man. And I want to tell you, I have a book here. I will give you this if you haven't already got it. We have about 180,000 people that have received this already. Islam, Religion of Peace. I remember some time ago when George Bush said Islam was a religion of peace. This ISIS is the tip of the spear of Islam. I'll send you this book. It's a very well done book, carefully thought out by Islamic scholars to show you precisely from the Quran and the Hadith what these people believe. So it's there for you if you want it. But let's do something to help these people, and we're not going to wait for the what John McCain calls the feckless administration. We're going to move, and we'll help these people because we belong to the Lord. John?
Pat, here at home, it turns out those missing IRS emails aren't missing after all. Judicial Watch, a conservative government watchdog, says it's been told by the government that backups of Lois Lerner's missing emails do exist. The group's president, Tom Fitton, said Department of Justice attorneys for the Internal Revenue Service told Judicial Watch on Friday that Lois Lerner's emails, indeed all government computer records, are backed up by the federal government in case of a government-wide catastrophe. He also said those attorneys report it would be too difficult to find Lerner's emails, but he added that they acknowledge that the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration is looking into the matter. Pat?
How many years does it take to look into a matter? You talk about stonewalling. I mean, the ISA and his committee members must be, chomping at the bit and foaming at the mouth. This is awful, what these people are doing. And they're basically saying, we are going to give you nothing, so keep on yelling, and we're going to keep on slow-walking this thing. And one day you'll be out of office, or we'll be gone, or something will happen, and something else will go on. There needs to be a special prosecutor. I don't like them at all, but we need to have one. And yet, when I asked Jay Sekulow, who does it? Well, it's Eric Holt of the Justice Department. So he's not going to appoint somebody who will really investigate this thing, because they're basically working on their dime. They're working on their playbook. And this is the Obama's administration's answer to the cry of people for tax justice. They ain't going to get any. John.
Pat, there are renewed calls for a new alert system after this weekend's magnitude 6 earthquake rattled Napa, California. Supporters say it would work much like systems already in place in Mexico and Japan, and could give people as much as 40 seconds in warning time to take cover. Meanwhile, Napa Valley remains on high alert for aftershocks. Sunday's earthquake destroyed dozens of homes and buildings, causing an estimated $1 billion in damage.
Probably the most severe earthquake that's happened to the Napa wine industry maybe in decades.
We want to make sure that the safety level increases and that people aren't going near buildings that have where there's a threat that debris may fall.
In spite of the catastrophe, Napa officials are promoting tourism. They're telling would-be visitors 80% of the region's wineries were not affected by the quake. The Department of Veterans Affairs says there's no proof delays in care caused any deaths at a VA hospital in Phoenix. Earlier this year, shocking revelations that up to 40 veterans died while waiting for care from the Phoenix facility. That exposed serious problems at other VA hospitals. While veterans waited months for appointments, VA employees were falsifying records to cover up the delays. But a new report by the VA's Inspector General says they could not conclusively prove that those delays caused any deaths. Still, VA Secretary Robert McDonald acknowledges the VA is in the midst of a very serious crisis. Well, Burger King is the latest American business considering relocating its headquarters to avoid high corporate taxes. It plans to buy the Canadian food chain Tim Hortons. Burger King could then relocate its headquarters to Canada, where taxes are much lower. President Obama and other Democrats have criticized businesses for wanting to move outside the U.S. to cut their tax bills because that means less money coming into Washington. But others say the U.S. business tax rate is far too high and the U.S. corporate tax system needs to be changed to help businesses succeed. Pat?
We have the highest corporate tax system in the world. And our corporations not only have to pay federal tax, which is high, but they also have to pay state taxes, which are also in places like California and New York very high. So if they can do an inversion and merge into a company that's located, say, in Ireland, where there maybe is 11 or 12% tax, or they can go to Canada where it's somewhat lower. Tim Hortons is located in Canada. Then they will save a lot of money. And these corporations have trillions of dollars stashed overseas, trillions in cash, just sitting in the bank that they won't bring home. The minute they bring it home, it's going to be subject to these incredible draconian penalties. All Congress has got to do is say, look, if you've got earnings overseas, and they've been taxed in a foreign jurisdiction, you can bring them home and repatriate them, and the tax will be 5% or something. And suddenly there'll be a flood of cash coming in to build new factories and get new equipment and put people to work. It would be a tremendous boon, but oh no, we're going to stick it to those nasty corporations. This is stupid. This is tax policy that's hurting us, and it would be so simple to change these taxes. Go down to a basic tax rate of, say, 20% or something like that. It would be a huge boon, and suddenly corporations from other parts of the world would be coming here instead of us going there. But to say it's not patriotic, I remember a law decision that was by a very eminent jurist in the New York, of course he's, I guess, Second Circuit, but he said nobody has an obligation, much less an honorable right to order their affairs to the convenience of the Internal Revenue Service. We can order our affairs to the best convenience we can find to avoid taxes. Not to evade taxes, that's a crime, but to avoid them by the way we make our planning. And that was a landmark decision from an eminent jurist. We have no obligation, no sacred right, no moral obligation whatsoever to order our affairs to the convenience of the Internal Revenue Service. And yet Obama said it's not patriotic to want to go someplace to pay lower taxes. Nonsense. John.
Pat, a new study has found another reason why American kids may be overweight or obese: their parents. According to the study published in the journal Pediatrics, more than 3/4 of the parents interviewed in the study didn't realize that their kids were overweight. Researchers say as kids have gotten bigger over the years, it's become common to see more heavier children, so if everyone else is big, that's the new normal. Parents then have a harder time realizing their children are as overweight as they really are. And Pat, we've said time and again that this obesity epidemic could be solved if more people simply tuned in to the 700 Club.
Absolutely. We're telling parents, control your children. They do not eat except what you give them. If you give it to them, they will eat it. And if you want to give them sugary food, if you want to give them fatty food, then they will get fat, and it's just too bad. And they will get diabetes, and they will get heart conditions, and they will die at an early age, which may be what you want. I don't know. But if you want them to live long and be healthy, get them on fruits and vegetables and, you know.
Things that aren't addictive, right?
Things that aren't addictive. And
or damaging.
Protein. You know, beans. I'm a great fan of beans. Black beans. Navy beans, pinto beans, every kind of bean.
It's a wise word.
They're good for you. They're good for children. All right.
Well, coming up, church and state working together for a change.
At the end of the day, I think, you know, it's a great place to focus. It's a win-win for everybody.
Hear why these two sides are joining forces. That's next.
Tomorrow,
2, 1.
You've seen the challenge. Now see the research.
Put it back on it, the tremors subsided.
Hear how scientists are fighting ALS. And then, the prospect who's making a name for himself with his legs.
Small steps at first, but then it became more of giant leaps.
See what happens when this speedster stops running.
I tried to run it off, but it just didn't work.
Tomorrow on the 700 Club.
Did you ever hear it said that there's a constitutional mandate for the, quote, separation of church and state? You know, those words don't appear in the United States Constitution. They were in the Russian Constitution, that the church would be separate from the state, and the state from the school, and all the church, the church from the school. That was in the Russian Constitution, but not in the American Constitution. But the judges have put it in, and I've written a book called Courting Disaster that showed many judicial renderings that were inaccurate, in my opinion, unconstitutional, but they did it. So the fact that those words weren't in the Constitution didn't stop the Supreme Court from banning public school prayer more than 50 years ago. Now, in one desperate country, Schools and churches are starting to work together again. And Charlene Aaron tells us why.
Obviously new.
Okay. Francella Perryman believes in the church's calling to meet the needs of the community. She's especially passionate about kids and practices what she preaches as outreach director for Mount Pisgah United Methodist Church in the Atlanta suburb of Johns Creek.
Jesus did not just sit in the pews. He was out in the community. And so if we are to seriously be a light to the world, you have got to get out into the community and support these children.
So when the Fulton County Public Schools asked for help from the faith community, Perryman immediately reached out to Hillside Elementary School, where many low-income students attend.
I just went to the principal and talked to her and found out what her needs were and our need to be a light.
Dr. Robert Avosa is superintendent of Fulton County Public Schools.
Well, with the school system of nearly 100,000 students and almost half of which live at or below the poverty level, it was clear early on that no matter how many resources we had, we weren't going to be able to reach every one of our children.
More than 100 houses of worship, including churches, synagogues, and others, have offered services ranging from feeding programs to after-school athletic camps.
As I began to talk with community members, it became very clear that there were a lot of people in the community, in our faith community in particular, that were interested in helping.
He knew going from talking about the plan to making it happen would be an uphill battle.
We had some folks in the media here in Atlanta questioning whether or not I was bringing in churches to change the way people believed. But, you know, we were careful about that. We brought in an attorney to share early on with our faith community the importance of working with schools, that this is a place for volunteerism, a place for people to help.
Perryman says the goal is demonstrating that help in tangible ways.
We're not so much focused on only having them attend our church. It's, again, being a partner with them and allowing them to see the light of Christ and supporting the schools.
Students here at Hillside Elementary are reaping tremendous benefits from the partnership between the Fulton County Public School District and the faith community. Volunteers from Mount Pisgah provide tutoring and mentoring programs during lunchtime. And the church recently hosted a back-to-school event, providing backpacks and free school supplies. Hillside Principal Dr. Maisha Adwe believes partnering with churches and other groups simply makes sense.
I think the biggest walkaway is that our schools are supported and don't always have to be supported by us. They're community, faith-based organizations that get a benefit from, religious benefit from supporting us, so why do we need to not tap into that resource?
The church also provides shuttle service to the school for parents interested in attending parent conferences but have no transportation. As a result, attendance has increased dramatically.
These parents want to be involved, and if transportation was an obstacle, that's the least that we could do, is to allow them to utilize our vehicles.
Dr. Adwe says the help makes her job easier.
I can't do everything, and I can't provide everything for my kiddos. It doesn't have to be grandiose. It just has to be sustainable, and that's what Mount Pisgah has provided for me, and it's just a simple thing.
We talk about our plans for the next year. We've been extremely successful and extremely blessed in our partnership with the school.
Blessings that extend to all involved.
The better prepared kids are to be self-sufficient and to contribute to the community, the healthier the community. And at the end of the day, I think, you know, it's a great place to focus. It's a win-win for everybody.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News, Roswell, Georgia.
Wonderful. You know, we always have these little snippets of bad news. It's nice to have a large feature of good news, and that's good news for all of us. Terry.
Well, up next, ground zero for America's growing racial divide.
As tragic as this is, it has exposed a tension that's been there for quite some time. There are narratives on both sides, and what it's like to be a police officer, also what's it like to be in different parts of the community.
A Pro Football Hall of Famer helps mend the fences in Ferguson, and that's next. Before August 9th, Ferguson, Missouri was just known as a small town a few miles outside of St. Louis. Since then, the place has become something else. It's the town that launched a national discussion over police brutality, and it's the town that's symptomatic of America's racial divide. But for pro football legend Aeneas Williams, Ferguson, Missouri is known as something else. It's known as the place he calls home.
Uncertainty and unrest linger in Ferguson, Missouri, a community inflamed and scarred by pending questions after an unarmed black teen was fatally shot by a white police officer.
All of a sudden, you're thrust into something that you wouldn't have volunteered for.
Aeneas Williams is one of St. Louis's most beloved sports figures. The former 8-time Pro Bowl cornerback has lived in the area since his trade to the Rams in 2001. He now pastors at a vibrant neighborhood church in Ferguson.
As tragic as this is, it has exposed a tension that's been there for quite some time. Two people on separate sides of the street. There are narratives on both sides, and what it's like to be a police officer, also what's it like to be in different parts of the community.
Just 1 week before the August 9th shooting, Aeneas was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. His induction speech is best remembered for this.
Not just to hear a speech where I thanked everybody, obviously the parents, everybody that helped me get there. I wanted, no matter from the youngest child that listened to the oldest, to take something from the speech to begin with the end in mind and die empty.
Translate that for me.
Begin with the end in mind simply means live a life of intention, what you believe God has put in your heart, and then dying empty, overcoming fear, overcoming the challenges, having exhausted all of the gifts and potential that the Lord had given me. I truly believe the greatest amount of wealth you could find in cemeteries. I believe most people die with their potential. Potential books, potential cures to cancer, just so many things.
Just 2.5 miles down the road from Aeneas's church, 18-year-old Michael Brown died. A makeshift memorial covers the blood-stained street.
I looked up the name Michael. I looked up Darren, the officer's name. Michael means who is like God. The name Darren means agent of change. Wouldn't it be the enemy himself that would try to take these destiny names and bring out something just horrendous through it? So what I want to do is take the original purpose of the names and bring the focus to it. Who is like our God, but to bring reconciliation and to bring healing in something that has been going on for years. And who is like our God except to allow any one of us that decide to be agents of good to bring about good in the midst of something bad.
Fitting that a former defensive back like Aeneas Williams is the one to champion reconciliation. Much like those interceptions, it's a principle that brings dramatic change.
When the ball's in the air, I'm not looking at the ball, I'm looking at the point on the ball. When your vision is right, your hands will automatically adjust to catch the ball. In terms of the hands and feet of Christ, the hands and feet of Christ I found in my own life are always right when my vision is right.
A vision to see clearly and a memory that quickly forgets.
Let me hear it from you, 35. What separated you from everybody else?
Without hesitation, the ability to overcome a bad play. Man, and to learn from the bad play. And why that fits in this moment, so many people, Tom, I meet, they talk about things that happened 15 years ago, negative in their life, as if it just happened. And as a cornerback, if Randy Moss caught a touchdown, they didn't stop the game. I had to go right back out. So the ability to immediately, intentionally forget something, but having learned from it, and to be able to move on.
For now, the fresh wounds have slowed any potential for prompt healing. Protesters line up roadside peacefully during the day. Many are residents from the immediate vicinity. But at night, the North St. Louis suburb draws confrontational agitators who trash streets and businesses, using Ferguson as a stage to aggressively vent their resentment.
Well, that's one of the things I learned in football. You have to be able to divorce yourself of emotions. Not that emotions are not real, but be able to bring your emotions in and go after an accomplishable goal. Because God has given us the responsibility to solve these issues. And part of that reconciliation is getting the police officer, the mayor, getting all the parties that be in a calm environment and share independently what are the practical experiences and challenges from all sides.
The urgent incentive for reconciliation carries the hope it will gift the next generation.
I've run track before, and the person handing off the baton bears the greatest responsibility for the exchange. They're not to let go of the baton until the next runner has it firmly in place. We're not going to pass this baton off the same way we got it. Let's do what we need to do, have the difficult conversations so we can find a resolve, a reconciliation, and then get this thing right and then pass it on to this next generation.
You have to learn to reconcile with yourself?
That is reconciliation, the ability to look at and own it. When you look at the film, you look at the play, there are no excuses. If you see it and didn't go right and you were the responsible party, the great ones that I found, you owned it. When I think about what Christ did with the ministry of reconciliation, he's called us as believers to be ambassadors. And ambassadors go in with a mission, not to take sides, but to reconcile differing parties together.
This is such a tragic situation, isn't it? I don't think anybody looks at it without recognizing that there are problems in our nation right now, lots of them, many of them in our nation's cities. This is a relatively small town outside of a big city. And, you know, there are racial issues still in our country to be resolved. There are issues with police and having too much of a military position and the way they respond. Remember when police used to walk the neighborhood? They'd know people by name, and they weren't frightening to people. Well, we need to go back to some of that knowing our neighbor. We need to go back to some of that caring about who it is we serve. And in our neighborhoods, we need to go back to standing up for what's right, going back to calling to accountability the way everyone in our neighborhood behaves. You know, we have those neighborhood watch houses. It's not enough. Everybody's got to get on board. You know, we can cry justice, we can be angry, we can become bitter. Even a word like reconciliation is so easy to say when we feel that someone's been unjustly treated. And in this scenario, a young boy's life lost, a police officer who says that, you know, he's broken and wounded by all of this and never meant for any of this to turn out the way that it did, was defending himself. Whose report will you believe? You know, God says to us that in order to walk well with him, we're to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with him. Those are two issues, to do justly and to love mercy, that both need to be applied in this scenario. It's not just a matter of right and wrong, it's much bigger than that. But I think we have to do what Aeneas said, look toward the future, to live with intention. I think the best legacy that we could give to Michael Brown would be, what are we going to do with this? How is it going to change us? How is it going to change the way we think, the way we behave? Are we open to change? And what am I personally, what are you personally going to do with what's happened here? A life's been taken, another life ruined. Let's make it matter, because we say we want to be a part of the change that makes tomorrow better. You can be bitter or you can be better, but today God offers a new beginning to all of us. Where do we start? Let's start by praying for Ferguson. Let's pray for that community. Let's pray for the Brown family. Let's pray for the Wilson family. And let's ask God to show us individually, what am I supposed to do, God? How can I change the ground right where I stand? Pray, please, for these families. Well, still ahead, the missionary who's been called a modern-day Mother Teresa. We're going to talk with Heidi Baker later on today's show. But first, we've got your email questions. One viewer writes, is it a sin to put down a sick pet? Stay tuned for another round of Bring It On. Pat's going to answer that question and more later on today's show.
Welcome back to the 700 Club. Former President Jimmy Carter is set to be the keynote speaker at a Muslim convention in Detroit this Friday. That's according to the Toledo Blade. The Islamic Society of North America, or ISNA, is hosting the event. CBN News has reported ISNA is the nation's largest Muslim group with ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Qaeda, and Hamas. ISNA leader Mohammed Magid has also been an advisor to the Obama administration. This year's conference is about elevating Muslim American culture. Speakers will offer ideas for advancing Islam in America over the next 5 years. The government of Australia plans to spend $60 million to fund measures to oppose violent Muslim extremism and radicalization. Australia wants to strengthen programs aimed at preventing young people from getting involved with Islamic terrorists in Iraq and Syria. Prime Minister Tony Abbott says at least 60 Australians are fighting with ISIS overseas. And you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com. Pat and Terry will be back with more of the 700 Club right after this. Tomorrow, you've seen the challenge. Now see the research.
Put it back on it, the tremor subsided.
Hear how scientists are fighting ALS. And then, the prospect who's making a name for himself with his legs.
Small steps at first, but then it became more of giant leaps.
See what happens when this speedster stops running.
I tried to run it off, but it just didn't work.
Tomorrow on the 700 Club. To listen to our top songs of the week, go to CBN Radio at cbn.com.
Well, it's time to bring on some of your email questions. Pat, this first one comes from a viewer who says, is it a sin to put down a sick pet out of mercy?
You know, the whole thing about sin, if that was the sin, it's a sin every time you eat a hamburger or a steak or a lamb chop or a piece of bacon or wear shoes with leather. You know, animals, like it or not, throughout centuries have been used to benefit mankind, and they are slaughtered. But in terms of a sick pet, if you really care for that animal, they get old, they get decrepit, they get arthritis, they get incontinent, and the most merciful thing is to take them to a veterinarian and let them be put to sleep.
It's very gentle, actually.
Very gentle, and there's absolutely no sin about it whatsoever. All right.
Here's a viewer who says, I understand that God forgives all sins through the blood of his Son, Jesus Christ. Does this include sin directly towards God? I have cursed God through my thoughts, and though I truly did not mean it, I slipped into sin and did it. I understand that this is a serious sin. Do I have hope?
You have hope because right now you're aware of the fact that it was a sin.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're conscious of the fact there's a sin and you ask for repentance, I think there's always hope. And you know, you curse God. Well, curse God and die was what Job's wife told him, but he didn't curse God, but you curse God. But, you know, the thing about God is he's big and understanding, but I wouldn't presume on his goodness all the time. But I do think that in a case like that, as long as you feel, you ask his forgiveness, apologize, tell him what you've done, ask him to forgive you, and he will.
Okay, this is from Christy Pat, who says, recently my stepson told us that he's having crushes on boys. He's 13 and lives with his mother most of the time. How do we approach the situation? What are the next steps we should take? We have 2 other boys, ages 3 and 1. What's your suggestion?
I know a lot of people disagree with this. They think that they're born that way. But I think nurture has a lot to do with it. I mean, he's being raised by a mother. So his attraction is now toward other men because he's raised by a woman. I think before I did anything else, I would get him male companions. I'd get him some man to help him. I mean, some mentor or someone who cares about young men in a fatherly, elder brother type of way, and let the kid grow up with a male role model and see what happens. So I think, you know, right now he's being raised by a single woman, and that's, you know, maybe skewing his orientation somewhat.
Well, and, you know, this is his stepmom writing this, saying he told us, so that's his dad that he's been, so his dad could step into that role a little more in his life.
His dad should.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is a viewer who says, when praying for a person to be delivered from bondage, does the person have to believe they're in sin or want to be delivered from their bondage?
I do think there has to be some agreement. If the person is resisting the power of God, then of course the power of God is not going to be effective because they're resisting it. So I do think they need to want to be helped. You know, Jesus talked to people, do you want to be healed? He spoke to somebody, would you like to be healed? Do you want to be healed? So they have to want to, and if they don't want to, they may be fighting you.
This is Darla, who says, my son is 5 years old and he loves to watch shows that involve magic. Are these shows okay for him to watch? His dad started to let him watch these at his house. I'm trying to raise him by the Bible, and I know it says witches are evil. Are these types of children's shows innocent, or do they need to be avoided?
I don't know which shows you're talking about, but I mean, magic per se is just sleight of hand, and it's just, you know, the hand's quicker than the eye, and it's illusion and so forth, and it's kind of cute, and it's show business, you know, that's okay. If it involves the occult, then it's a different matter, and I think the magic part with card tricks and stuff like that, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just fun and games.
This is Warren, who says, Pat, I remember some time ago you taught about the end times and mentioned that Iraq and Syria will be joined together as a new Assyrian empire. When I see what ISIS is doing, I can't help but think the biblical prophecy is coming true. Do you agree? What does the Bible say is going to happen?
Well, you read in the book of Isaiah, and it says that there'll be a highway, and Assyria will be one, and Egypt will be another, and Israel will be another, and there's going to be a highway joining Assyria. And so Assyria is part of Iraq, and it's current Syria. So indeed, one day, I think, according to that scripture, those areas will join together and reform the old Assyria. Okay.
Okay. Well, that's all the time we have for today.
Well, folks, CBN is helping people around the world and also here at home. And when the city of Pensacola, Florida, was hit by record-breaking flash floods, it just devastated the city, and thousands of homes were damaged. So Operation Blessing was on the scene, helping people like Tony and Nancy Hunter rebuild their lives. Watch this.
When a historic flash flood hit Pensacola, Florida, many families lost practically everything they owned.
When I saw the house the next morning, it was just devastated. There was still water everywhere and just dirt everywhere, and you knew pretty much everything had to have been gone.
Nancy and Tony Hunter both serve others working as nurses. They have insurance, but it'll only cover half of what they lost. The first step they needed to take was gutting their home before mold set in, but they have no one to help them.
I felt like it was going to take us like weeks and months to be able to go through everything. It was more like wanting to run and hide because it's just overwhelming.
I'm not a young man anymore, so if I'd had to face this on my own, it'd been pretty difficult.
That's when Operation Blessing arrived with dozens of volunteers. They immediately got to work helping the Hunters salvage as many personal belongings as they could.
The body of Christ is supposed to be there for each other, and you guys are.
We were able to gut their home, tearing out drywall and wet carpet before mold set in. We also took the time to pray with the family. Tony says in spite of all they've been through, he still feels blessed.
A lot of my family photos and keepsakes, they're gone. But my wife's doing great. My daughter Sarah's doing great. My faith has never been stronger. My worship has never been stronger. God's still on the throne.
I was down there right after Katrina in New Orleans and saw the devastation, houses flooded, mold up to 4 or 5 feet, you know, where the water had been, houses that had to be completely gutted. The mold was terrible. We wore masks to try to clean that out. That stuff would give people headaches and make them sick. It was terrible. But God's people came to rescue, and they're there in Pensacola to rescue. We can't help everybody, but we can sure help a lot of them. Not only overseas, but here at home. Many people, like those folks you just saw, we can reach out to them. We can help those starving Christian people on the mountain slopes of Iraq, and we can help people down in floodplains and Tornado Alley or wherever they are. It's so hard to be alone, so hard to be by yourself. And when somebody shows up that says, we'll give you a hand, we'll help you rebuild. We'll give you a new start in life. makes a huge difference. Can't do it to everybody, but we can do it to as many as we can reach. And I want you to take this under advisement. We've got a thing called Living Under God's Blessings that I think people have responded to. They like it a lot. Something, a teaching I did in Jerusalem at the Feast of Tabernacles, and something Gordon did about what's going on in Israel. And we'll give this to you as our gift. But what I want you to do is call right now and say, look, you can count on me for 65 cents a day. You know, the price of stuff, I mean, where was it? I was reading that a Coke was $5. I mean,
wow.
It was you know, just, and a pack of cigarettes, $7 or $8. So we're talking about 65 cents a day. Please call 1-800-759-0700. We care about you, and you can help us care for others. Terry?
Well, Heidi Baker went from one of the wealthiest parts of our country to one of the poorest nations in the world. Hear why she did it. That's next. As the head of Iris Global, Heidi Baker has been called many things. She's been called an evangelist, a teacher, a missionary, but to the thousands of children she ministers to, she has a different name, Mama Heidi. And Mama Heidi's with us now, fresh off completing her latest book. I thought we were going to a piece there, Heidi. We were going to see you. But the book is called Reckless Devotion. And boy, that describes, I think, Heidi, your heart and your caring for the children that you minister to the people. You wrote this with your husband, Roland. And I want to, you know, usually we talk with you just about the kids and what's going on, but you have a real message, I think, in this for all of us. What does reckless devotion mean to you?
For me, it's just giving everything to Jesus, being so abandoned in His presence that you'll do anything, you'll go anywhere, that you don't care what He asks of you, that your heart's just wide open and you live inside the heart of God.
And you have lived that way for many, many years. 2 weeks after you were married, you had $30 in your pocket and a one-way ticket. Talk about that.
Well, we knew we were called to missions. I had gone out to lunch once with Roland, and then we got married. And we had prayed together, but we didn't even date. And we just knew we were called. And we just prayed, we on our faces seeking God. And He said Indonesia. Wow. So we trusted Him. And on our wedding, we were able to get the airfare for a one-way ticket. And we've been missionaries for 34 years now.
So Indonesia, but now you're really in Africa. I just came back from a region very close to where you are. You're in a number of places.
We're going on 20 years now living in Mozambique. Mozambique's our home, Pemba, northern Mozambique. And then a third of our lives we travel and call other people to give their lives away.
Talk a little bit about the Makua people. This is a people group that you have really been focused on, and I want you to talk a little bit about why.
Yes, the reason I'm focused on the Makua is I was in the glory realms, in the presence, and I was on my face worshiping God, and I got so yielded. I said, even if you send me back to Laguna Beach, I'll go. And I really, that's yielded. And the Lord said, go and get my lost Makua bride. I didn't know where they were. My husband found out they were in northern Mozambique. We were in southern Mozambique.
And you didn't even know
Never heard of them. And we went. They were the most unreached people group in Southeast Africa. And we just have given our life now 11 years. And we went from no churches to 2,700 churches.
Good grief.
Among the Makua, the deaf are hearing, the blind are seeing, the crippled are walking, the poor hear the good news, and God is crashing in on this tribe. Wow. It's just glorious. They're finding His love.
You never seem to lose the fire and the passion for what God's called you to.
No.
How do you keep that stirred up, Heidi?
I'm in love. I'm in love with Jesus. I'm so in love with Him. I love just worshiping Him.
Yeah.
I love being in His presence, just seeking His face.
That's where you hear from Him.
That's where I love the secret place.
You've said that there's no cost to loving God, but the cost doesn't matter. Wow, that's a powerful statement. That's ruled your life, hasn't it?
Yes, because when you see the beauty of who Jesus is, when you really know him and you meet the Father in depth of intimacy, it doesn't matter. It feels like no cost to go into the darkest places on the planet, even if you're being shot at, no cost. You know where you're going. Yeah. You're just in love. And love, when you're deeply in love with God, you don't feel the cost.
You ride above everything.
Yeah,
you really ride
do.
about everything. You wanted to share a story about a boy named Anselmo. Tell me about him.
He was wandering around in the garbage, wandering around on the streets begging, and merciful God, we found this beautiful treasure, and he came to live in our children's village. And he had 2 club feet, really terrible, very deformed, and he was thrown out by his family because of these club feet. They didn't want him because he was so deformed. But of course, we want him. He's beautiful. Every child matters. Every child matters. So we took him in, and he met Jesus. And we were on outreach, and he said, the children always preach and teach and minister, little 10-year-olds on the bush outreach. So I said, what's God showing you? He said, I see somebody who can't walk right, and they're going to be healed. And I'm thinking, wow, you can't walk right. I'm thinking that. But I say, okay, great. So he shared it on the mic, and we're in the dark, in the bush, reaching the unreached. Out of the dark comes this little shadow woman. She's bent over, and she's got a child on her back, maybe 3 and a half. And she puts this child on the dirt, and the child just flops back. No muscle tone, nothing. And Anselmo just looks at me, this cheeky grin. He's like, I got it right, Mom. I got it right. I said, okay, go for it. So he grabs this little child, no muscle tone, flat on her back, grabs the hands, and up the child comes. And completely, totally healed, and starts walking.
Wow.
It was so powerful. And Anselmo is just full of Jesus' passion and heart, and he's not looking at his own crippled feet. I thought, Lord, we've been praying for his feet for years, and they haven't straightened. He just saw this crazy, awesome miracle in the bush. What do you want to do? And the Lord wanted to use a surgeon. And the Lord used a surgeon. We have a bush plane. My husband flies it, flew to our base in Malawi, Bangula, and the bush surgeon out there went in and fixed his feet. It took 6 months. They did 1 each, and our own medical doctors from our clinic flew and took care of him. So it was a whole village and 2 countries and lots of love. And now Anselmo's walking straight, and he's still preaching the gospel with great fire.
You know, you have so many stories of miracles. If you want to live a life of reckless devotion, to find out how, get Heidi's devotional book. That's the title of it. It's available nationwide. If you go to cbn.com, we've got a special treat for you, because for the next week, we're going to feature excerpts from Heidi's book on our daily devotion section. Heidi, thank you so much. It's always a blessing to have you here.
It's great to be with you. I love you too.
Thank you. Pat, over to you.
She's one of the great heroes of the faith in the entire world. We're glad she's here. We leave you with today's Power Minute from Psalm 50. Call upon me in the day of trouble, and I will deliver you, and you shall glorify me.